A brief history of Grove House, Weston-super-Mare. It is not possible to date the earliest building on this site, although evidence suggests it links to a medieval village of Weston-super-Mare. The nearby parish church of St John Baptist, built in 1824, replaced a much older, at least 13th century, and considerably smaller church. The adjacent 17th century glebe house served as a rectory until 1889. These three important buildings stood above the marine flood level, giving reason for the name of this place. The West Settlement above the sea, first recorded in the current spelling in Dickensian records 1348. The Arthur and Winter families were lords of the manor in Weston-super-Mare until ownership passed to the Pigots of Brockley in 1696. A watercolour of Grove House, dated 1870, shows what appears to be a 17th century house with a newly tiled roof, probably a replacement for what would have then been a more typical local thatched roof. As seaside visiting became fashionable for the upper classes, in the second half of the 18th century, the house took on a holiday village role for the mayoral family. By 1790, the family's second son, the Reverend Wadham Pigot, who had been appointed curate in charge of Weston-super-Mare, made Grove House his home. Small improvements, including the building of a new garden wall, was done in 1805. Wadham's niece, Anne Provis, came to live at Grove House before marrying John Hugh Smith of Ashton Court in 1815. This marriage established a Pigot-Smith line. Following Wadham's death in 1823, Anne and John spent more of their time at Grove House, and with the family of 10 children, it became necessary to extend their home, firstly in 1835 and the back in the late 1840s towards the east. John died in 1853, and his son, John Pigot Wadham Smith Pigot, inherited the estates from his marriage in 1857. A son, Cecil, was born. It was Cecil who brought the house to life. It became the centre of a glittering social circle throughout the second half of the 19th century, with many famous visitors staying here, including the novelist Wilkie Collins. By the end of the 19th century, Smith Pigot's finances and aspirations were challenging. The grounds were sold to the Manor-Cupel Authority and converted into a public park, whilst the family remained in occupation of the house until just after Cecil's death in 1893, when it was also passed on to the local authority ownership. Grove House took on a new lease of life as the town's first free library until the opening of the new public library in the boulevard in the 1900s. Later it became a cafe for a short time, reverted to the use of public dwelling in the official residence of the town clerk. Much of the house, including the older section, was damaged by incendiary bombs in 1941, and the shell was demolished by the Borough Council in 1952. In 1958, an in-chorus bungalow was added to what remained of the 1884 nursery, built by Hans Fowler Price, and occupied by the park superintendent until 1974, when the new Woodspring District Council, later supposed by North Somerset District Council, converted the whole building into the Mayor's Parlour and the Council Chamber for Weston-super-Mare Chamber Trustees. Though remaining in North Somerset District Council's ownership, Grove House has been occupied by the new Weston-super-Mare Town Council since inception in May 2000.
Weston had its first mayor in 1937 after an Act of Parliament was laid in 1935, and this is the actual charter from that document that was granted by the King at the time. The Mayor of Weston-super-Mare was then known as the Borough Mayor and survived as the Borough Mayor until the County of Avon was created in 1974, so exactly 37 years. Remained as then in 1974 became the Charter Trustee Mayor until the creation of the Town Council in 2000, when it became the Town Mayor of Weston-super-Mare. And these documents here give a really good social history of Weston-super-Mare at the time when the Act of Parliament was granted. So in 1937, we had a lot of private schools in Weston-super-Mare, only one state school. We had water mains, we had sewerage, we had street lighting, we had electricity, and we had lower mortality than the rest of the country in both infants and also people living longer as well. So Weston was an attractive place to come. It didn't have a mayor, it was competing with the likes of Bath and those places and needed to have some sort of position. When it got granted borough status, it had the mayor, and the mayor still remains in position to this day. This is the only copy we've got of the souvenir of the actual granting of the charter in 1937. The event took place in the bandstand in Grove Park. The gentleman receiving it is Henry Butt, who was the first mayor of Weston-super-Mare, and the gentleman handing him the document which we looked at just now is the then Lord Lieutenant of Somerset, who is the Marquess of Bath, one of the ancestors of Lord Longleat. And this is a history of Weston-super-Mare at the time. Shows the makeup of the council at the time, who obviously predominantly were all male and were businessmen. It goes on to show Weston-super-Mare at the time, and we had a range of things which made it attractive, including an airport. The picture here shows the number of the number of small planes we had at the airport, and showing the comparison between the town in 1829 and the benefits of when the sea wall was put in the 1930s. And you can see the houses now are not only built on the hill, they're down at sea level, whereas before only affluent people could live in Weston because the houses on the hillside didn't flood, and we still get water coming into the houses in Weston-super-Mare, but not to the extent we had at that time. This made it an attractive seaside place, with the railway coming here as well, attracted in the late 1800s and 1900s, made it a very attractive seaside town for people to visit, and also a population had gone up over the period from 10,000 to about 50,000 at that time. The pictures are interesting. You talk about the social history that she's got around her neck. It was acceptable at the time.